In this video, we'll do the vector multiplication. So, as I told you, multiplication of vectors can have three cases. First, we can multiply a scalar and a vector. Scalar and a vector. Then we can multiply two vectors. A vector with another vector, and similarly two vectors can again be multiplied in another way. So we can multiply two vectors in two different ways. So we will discuss about that in a moment. So first, the scalar and a vector multiplied together. So it is quite simple. A scalar is just a number which is multiplied by a vector. So what does this mean? So let's take one example. Let's say we are multiplying this vector a with a scalar k. Now what this means? This means that the magnitude of the vector a will become k times its original value. And what happens to the direction? The direction can have two things here. Okay, the direction may change or it may not change, or it may not change. How is it decided whether the direction will change or not? So it depends on the sign of the scalar. Okay, if the sign of the scalar is positive, then the direction will not change, and if the sign of the scalar is negative, then the direction also changes. So let's say we take this example. We have this vector a. Okay, we have this vector a. Now let's say we multiply this vector with a number called 2. So here the direction will not change because the sign is positive, so it will stay in its original direction, but the magnitude will become twice. So let's say the magnitude of the vector was 3, so now it will become 6. So magnitude will become twice. So resultant, here the resultant will be a vector, obviously, because the direction is there and also the magnitude is there. Now let's take another example. So let's say again we had this vector a. Now I multiply this vector with, let's say, minus 3. Let's say the magnitude of this was 2, so I multiply it with the vector minus 3. So what will happen here? First, the direction will change. Okay, so the direction will be now in this particular orientation. So let's say this is the direction, and the magnitude will become 3 times. Okay, so I will try to make it 3 times. The magnitude will become 3 times. So let's say it was 2, so now it will become 6. 3 into 2 is 6. So when we have a negative scalar, then the value will become obviously that much times, and the direction will also change. So this happens in the scalar multiplication. The magnitude changes by that much, and the direction changes if the sign is negative. It does not change if the sign is positive. Now let's discuss about the multiplication of a vector with a vector. So the first type is the scalar multiplication or the dot product. Let's say we have two vectors, vector a and vector b. So if you want to take their dot product or their scalar multiplication, we represent it like this. There is this dot between the two vectors. The value will be ab cos theta. Okay, the value of this is ab cos theta. We will come to see how this is the case. So first let's discuss what the dot product means. Okay, what does this physical significance of dot product is? So let's say we have this vector a like this. Okay, the vector a is like this, and the vector b is like this. Vector b is like this. So what does dot product tells us? So the dot product tells us that what is the projection of one vector in the direction of other vector. For example, what is the projection of vector b in the direction of vector a? So this much is the projection of vector b in the direction of a. It is like a shadow. Okay, so let's say if the sun is here, so the shadow will be of b, the shadow will be like this. Okay, like this. So this is the dot product tells us about the projection of one vector in the direction of another vector. So when you do this, so you know that if this is theta, then this will be b cos theta, we discussed in the previous lecture, and this is b sin theta. So again it is quite simple now. So the a dot b will be equal to a into b cos theta. Okay, this is a and this much is this particular value is b cos theta by the vector resolution. So this is how a dot b becomes ab cos theta. Now the important thing is that this quantity ab cos theta, it is a scalar quantity. So we get a resultant which is a scalar. So resultant will be a scalar quantity, as opposed to in the previous case where we got a vector in the resultant as well. So in scalar multiplication we get a scalar resultant. Okay, this does not have any direction. Now there is one another important aspect which is about the vector resolution. Okay, so during that we did not discuss about this particular thing. During vector resolution we did not discuss this one thing, so let's discuss this now. So we have usually three dimensions: x, y and z dimension, length, breadth and height dimension. So let's say this is x, this is y and this is z. So every vector has three components. Okay, x component, y component and z component. For example, let's say 2 comma 3 comma 5. So the x component is 2, y component is 3, z component is 5. So there is another way of representing this. In vector we let's say this vector is vector a. So we can represent vector a like this: 2i cap plus 3j cap plus 5k cap. What is this? So I cap represent x direction, j cap represent y direction, k cap represent z direction. So this tells us that in x direction the magnitude of a is 2, in y direction magnitude of a is 3, and in z direction the magnitude of a is 5. So this is another way of representing. So we have this one important formula for I dot I, j dot j and k dot k. So if you want to multiply two vectors which are both in I direction, that is x direction, then we have to do this I dot I. So when we do this I dot I, then we will get, tell me what we will get. We will get 1. Why 1? So it is quite simple to understand. So let's say one vector was in this direction, the another vector is also in this direction. So both are in the same direction, so the complete projection will be there. Okay, the complete projection, let's say the second vector was like this, so only this much projection was there, but in this case both the vectors are in same direction, so the complete projection of the second vector is here, complete projection is here. So therefore the value will be 1, because one vector is completely projected in the direction of another vector. And similarly for other cases like j dot j and k dot k, so all this will be equal to 1. But what happens if we have I and k, or I j or j k? What will happen? This all will be 0. Why? Because they are perpendicular to each other. Let's say I is here, j is here. Okay, let's say this is k, this is I. So they are perpendicular to each other. So there is no projection of j in the direction of I, no projection. There is no projection of k in the direction of I. So because of that, when we have two different directions like I, j and k, then we will get 0 value, because there is no projection of one vector in the direction of another vector. So just keep this thing in mind also. Now last thing is the vector product or the cross product. So the vector multiplication or the cross product is another type of multiplication between two vectors. It is represented like this. Let's say we have two vectors a cross b, then we will get something like this, ab sin theta, and there will be a direction as well which will be perpendicular to a and b. We will discuss that in a moment. So what will happen here is that let's say I have two vectors a and let's say a vector is b. Now what if I want to find a vector which is perpendicular to both these vectors? How can I found out this? So in order to find a vector which is perpendicular to both the vectors, we do cross product or vector multiplication. So think about it, what vector will be perpendicular to both these vectors? So there are two possibility, one vector which is coming out of the board and another vector which is going inside the board, okay, inside the screen. So that vector, okay, let me draw it like this, okay. If you understand, let's say this is x, this is y, and this is z. So this vector will be perpendicular to both these vectors, both a and b vectors. So this is by using the vector multiplication we find a vector which is perpendicular to both the given vectors. So it is given by ab sin theta, and the resultant is here a vector quantity. So we get a resultant which will be a vector quantity itself. And what will be the direction of that vector? It will be perpendicular to both these vectors. So for that we represent it by n vector. N is the abbreviation for normal or perpendicular. So in cross product we have a vector which is the perpendicular vector of the given vectors, and it is found out by ab sin theta. Now similarly, let's say we discuss about the vector resolution here. So here what it will be a different thing here, I cross I, j cross j, and k cross k, they will come out to be 0. Okay, why 0? Because these both are in same direction. So if both are in same direction, then theta will be equal to 0 degree, and we know that sine 0 degree is equal to 0. So I cross I equal to I into I sine 0 degree, and this will be 0. So this complete value will be 0. Okay. So before we go any further, there is this this standardization I, j and k. Follow this sequence I, j and k. So first let's multiply I cross j. So what we will get? We will get k vector. Why? Because which vector is perpendicular to both I and j? It is the k vector. Okay, z axis is perpendicular to both x and y axis. Okay, now which vector is perpendicular to j cross k? It will be the I vector. And which vector is perpendicular to k and I? It will be the j vector. So please remember, there is this important sequence going on. This is the standardization, because in vector multiplication the sequence is also important. So go like this, I, j and then k. Okay, I, j and then k. So what happened if we go in the reverse direction? Let's say j cross I, let's say we go from j to I. So in this case we will get minus k, that is minus z axis. In k cross j we will get minus I, that is minus x axis, and I cross k I will get minus j axis, that is minus y axis. So this is important, that in vector multiplication the order of multiplication is important, so keep that thing in mind. In scalar multiplication this is not the case. You can do whatever way you like, you will get the same answer. So the direction the order of operation is important in vector multiplication. It is not important in scalar multiplication. So this is a short summary of how to multiply vectors. Obviously this is quite brief, but you will understand this in detail in your other classes. Okay, so for now just keep this thing in mind. Obviously if you do some examples you will be able to understand it more clearly, and will use this concept while doing the questions of mechanics. So during that time you will better understand the concept of vector multiplication. So for now, just remember that there are three types of vector multiplication: a scalar and a vector, two vectors, and again two vectors. So when scalar is multiplied by a vector, we get a resultant which is a vector, and it changes the magnitude, and it may or may not change the direction. When we have scalar multiplication, then the resultant is a scalar itself, and it shows the projection of one vector in direction of another. And in vector multiplication, we want to find the vector which is perpendicular to both the given vectors, and the resultant is also a vector which is in the direction perpendicular to the given vectors. And you can remember I, j and k using this sin theta and cos theta. So this was the summary of vectors, the brief introduction to vectors. Now we'll move to the second important part of maths that we need to understand is the calculus. Calculus was first discovered by Newton and Leibniz. The main application of calculus was in the mechanics, and because of that Newton discovered the calculus. Calculus has mainly three major parts, okay, but we'll discuss about two main parts. One is the differential calculus, and the another one is the integral calculus. We also call this differentiation and integration. Differentiation and integration. So we will discuss about these two types of calculus. So at present I do not expect you to understand much of the things that I will tell you about integration and differentiation. So what I want you to do is just try to remember these formulas, and just try to think differentiation and integration as some sort of a function operating on something. Okay, when you operate some kind of a differentiation on something, you will get something else. Okay, when you do some scrambling on the input, you will get some output. So for now, just think calculus, differentiation and integration like some function which will change the input. Obviously there is much to differentiation, much more to differentiation and integration, but you will not be able to properly understand at the present moment, because this in itself is a complete course in mathematics. You will study about differentiation and integration for around a complete year. So this is huge, okay, this is huge. So we need to just complete it in brief, and just remember a few formulas, and that will be more than enough for now. Okay, otherwise you will get a lot of confusion from if we go into the detail much. So differential and integral calculus. First we'll start with differentiation. So let's say I have this graph which tells us about the motion of any object. Let's say this tells us about the change of position of any object with respect to time. So in short, I tell you what is differentiation. So I can say differentiation tells us about the small variation of one function with the small variation in another function. For example, we have two functions here, y and t. So what will be differentiation? Differentiation will be small variation in y. What is d? D is not anything related to y. D is like the representation of differentiation. So for small we use d. So small variation of y with small variation of t. So what is differentiation? Small variation of one function with small variation of another function. So for example, with small change in time, what will be the small variation in the position of the object? So that is the differentiation. Again I am repeating here, this small d is the symbol for differentiation. Okay, so let's say the function is y, and I want to find the variation of y with respect to time. So what will I write? I will write like this. So what does this tells us? It tells us about the small variation of function y with respect to time. So differentiation tells us about the small change in one function with respect to another function. We can also say that it tells us about the instantaneous rate of change of one function with another function. Instantaneous rate of change or small change of one function with respect to another function. So for now this is it. You need to keep this thing in mind, that differentiation tells us about small changes. Now what about integration or integral calculus? So let's say I draw a graph. Let's say this is x, this is y. Now this is the weird graph that we have been given. Now you have been asked to find the area under this curve. So how can you find the area under this curve? Okay, you have been asked to find the area under this curve. So how can you find this area? So obviously you do not have any formula for this weird shape. If the graph was something like this, then you could have easily find using length into breadth. Okay, or if the graph was something like this, you could have find using half length in half base into height. Okay, but the shape here is not any standard shape. So how to find the area under this curve? So for that we use integral calculus or integration. What does this mean? So we can approximately find the area if we do one trick here. So what trick will I use? So I will divide this huge area into small pieces. Okay, small little pieces. So like this, small little pieces. I will divide this into small little pieces. Now I will try to find the area of all the small little pieces by approximating them to be a rectangle. Okay, look here, they can be approximated like a rectangle. Obviously I know this is not exact, but the smaller the width of the rectangle gets, the more will be our more better will be our value. Okay, so integration tells us about how to find the area under a curve by finding the area of a small region and then finally integrating all of them. Integrating means summing. Okay, integrating means summing. So integration is like a summing operation. So we can find the area under this curve. First what you will do, first you will divide it into small parts, then find this area and finally integrate or summing all the areas. So what is the symbol for integration? So for integration we use, for discrete integration we use this symbol. This is the famous symbol of summation, and for analog integration, continuous integration, we use this. So this is the usual symbol that we use for integration. So for example, we need to integrate this region. So how can I write it? I can write it like this: integration of x, okay, from, let's say this point is A, from point A to point B, from point A to point B. So it can also be written like this. Okay, this is similar to this, A to B y dx. So we are finding the integration of y with respect to x, integration of y with respect to x. Okay, we are adding the y values with respect to x. So this is integration. Integration is the summation of small areas to make the to find the value of the complete area, and differentiation is about small change of one function with respect to another function. So for now this is the thing that you need to keep in mind. Now there are some formulas. Okay, so just keep those formulas in mind and you will understand the importance of differentiation and integration when we start doing mechanics. Okay, so I will write those formula for differentiation and integration and just keep those formulas in your mind. So this is the formula sheet for various types of differentiation and integration. On the left side we have formula for differentiation, on the right side we have formula for integration. So first is the differentiation of a function x. So if we have function x, when we differentiate it with respect to x, then we will get 1. Okay, because this is like dx by dx, so it will be equal to 1. Now if we have another function which is dax by dx, so here it means that we have one constant. A is a constant, okay, it is 2 3 4, some value is there, scalar value, a number constant. So if this is the case, then we can do one thing, we can put a outside because it is a constant, it cannot change with any change in x, so therefore it comes out, and again we get a, and this dx by dx is 1, so we will get a, okay, a. So when we differentiate dax with respect to dx, we will get a. Now this is the most important formula, okay, this is the general formula. If we have d by dx and we have to differentiate x to the power n, now what you need to keep in mind is the solution will be n will come out in the front and the power will reduce by 1. So just keep these formulas in mind, and you will when you will use it, you will understand it better. Differentiation of cos x is minus sin x is cos x, tan x is sec square x. So just keep these formulas in mind, that when you, the differentiation is like a function, when you operate it in some input, you will get some output, okay. Cot x, sec x, all these values are here, okay, all these values are here. So just keep these things in mind, and do not remember this for now at least, because you can always refer back to this formula during solving the questions. But yeah, when you will do it in maths, then you have to remember most of these formulas. Now similarly in integration, when we integrate dx, okay, so we will get x, and this plus c is a constant that you have to add in every integral integral result, okay. So just keep this thing in all the integration values when you have indefinite integral. There are two types of integrals, indefinite and definite, so just do not get confused about any of those things. Integration of x to the this again is the most important formula, x to the power n with respect to dx. So like in differentiation we had this formula for x to the power n, similarly in this integration we have x to the power n plus 1, the power will get added up with 1 and upon n plus 1. So these formulas are important. Sin x is minus cos x is sin x, and so on, okay. So one thing you can notice here is that integration is the reverse operation of differentiation, okay. For example, sin x gives you cos x and cos x gives you sin x, okay. Tan x gives you sec square x, then sec square x gives you tan x. So integration and differentiation are inverse operation. In differentiation we make large thing into small piece, and in integration we add the small things to make a big thing, as you remember. So integration and differentiation are inverse operations of each other. So just keep a few of these formulas in your mind, and this will be clear to you once you do some questions, and we'll do mechanics also using integration and differentiation. Now the next thing that we need to discuss is significant digits. So what are significant digits or significant figures? Significant figures are measured value of a physical quantity which tells the number of digits in which we have confidence. Okay, let me just write it and then we'll discuss what I mean. So it is the it is the number of digits in we have confidence. So more the significant values obtained in the measurement, greater is the accuracy of the measurement. So for example, let's say I found out a value of something like 12.4, okay, 12.47. Now in this measurement I am sure about the calculation that I made for 1 and 2 and 4, this digits, but I am not sure whether this is correct or not. This might be 6 or this might be 8 or something else, so I am not sure about this digit. So in this particular question we might estimate this particular value as 12.5, let's say. or 12.4, let's say. So these significant digits are the digits in which we have confidence that they are correct. For example, in these three digits are significant digits because we have confidence in them. Okay, so significant digits are the digits in which we have confidence that we have measured it correctly. So now there are a few rules for finding how many significant figures or digits we have in a question. Okay, so let's discuss those rules, and using those rules you will be easily able to find the number of significant digits in any particular measurement. Okay, so the first rule is all non-zero digits are significant. All non-zero digits are significant. So these are some rules that we follow. So if we have some measurement, and in that measurement whatever the non-zero digits are, we will consider all those digits to be significant. For example, let's say the measurement is 2651, then how many significant digits are here? 4 significant digits are here because all are non-zero. Second rule is all the zeros occurring between two non-zero digits are significant. So that means, let's say I take this one example. Let's say x is 1.0809. So here 1, 8 and 9 are non-zero, so they are significant, but the zeros in between two non-zero digits are also significant. That is, this 0 is between 1 and 8, this 0 is between 8 and 9. So all these zeros are significant. So we have how many? We have 5 significant digits here. Now the third rule is all zeros on right of last non-zero digit in the decimal part are significant. So for example, let's say x is 0.0080. So here we have two significant digits. How? These two are significant, so we have two significant digits. These zeros will not be considered significant. Zeros coming before will not be considered significant. Now the fourth rule. Fourth rule is that in a number which is less than 1, all zeros to right of decimal point and to left of a non-zero point or non-zero digit are not significant. This is just the corollary of the third point. For example, x is 0.0080. So here we have two significant digits, only this. So what this fourth point is saying is that the zeros which are after, first the number is less than 1, secondly these zeros are in between the decimal and the non-zero digit, so these zeros are not significant. So just the corollary of the third point. Now the fifth point is all zeros on right side of a non-zero digit are non-significant. On right side of a non-zero digit are not significant. For example, let's say x is 1000. So here only one significant digit is there. Which one? The first one. Let's say x is 37800. So here how many significant digits? 3 significant digits are there because the right side zeros are not significant. So these are the few rules that you use while finding the significant digits. Now let's start the last part of this chapter, which is the error in the measurement. So it is quite important to understand that whenever we do some measurement, then it is not possible that that measurement is 100% accurate. It is almost never possible. It is almost never possible that the measurement is 100% accurate. There is always some error during the measurement. So let's discuss about the errors in measurement and how do we study about that error that we do during the measurement. So we will discuss about three types of errors here. So first error is the absolute error. Second error is the relative error, and third error is the relative percentage error. So these three main errors are important for us: absolute error, relative error, and the relative percentage error. So let's understand this concept using one example, otherwise you will not be able to understand. Without any example, this is very hard to grasp. Okay, so let's take one example. So let's take this example. We have following values of the distances measured for a particular object. Now we have to calculate absolute error, relative error, and the percentage error. So what are the values? The values which are given are 1.29, 1.33, 1.34, 1.35, 1.32, 1.36, 1.30, and 1.33. So these are the values that we have been given. This is our question, that these are the values which are measured during the calculation. So we have to find the different errors here. So how to find different errors? So first of all, just follow these steps and you will be able to find all the errors. So first of all, you need to find the mean of all these measurements. So the mean of all this measurement, how will you find mean? Add all the values, and how many digits are there? 8 digits. So divide this with 8. Okay, hopefully you understand how to take the mean. Add all the values and divide by the total number of values that we have. So here 8 values are here. So when you calculate, the mean will come out to be 1.3275, which is approximately 1.33. So our mean is 1.33. Mean is also represented like this. Okay, bar on the value. Now first we'll start with the absolute error. So how to find the absolute error? So absolute error is quite simple. Absolute error tells us about the error in the measurement as compared to the mean value or the actual value. Mean value is sometimes also called the real value, actual value, okay, of the measurement. So absolute error tells us about how the measurement is different from the, how much is it different from the mean value or the actual value. So let's start with all these values. So delta x1, delta means change or the difference in the measurement of the first value, second value, third value, fourth value, fifth value, sixth, seventh, eighth. Okay, so what is the difference? We will take the modulus, remember. Okay, so that we just need to keep in mind that how much is it different. It does not matter whether this positive or negative. So first 1.3, it is our mean value. So we subtracted it with the first measurement, that is 1.29. So the first measurement is off by how much? 0.04. It is off by this much centimeter. All these values are in centimeter. So this is off by this much centimeter, first measurement. Now second measurement, so it is 1.33 itself, second value. Okay, second value is 1.33 itself. So how much is it off from the mean value? 0. It is the actual, it is the exact value. Then similarly for third, 1.34. So the third value is 0.01. remember, this would have been negative, but because there is this modulus, we are writing only the positive values. And similarly for all this, okay, 1.33, let me just quickly write all this. 1.33, 1.33, 1.33, 1.33, minus 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 minus. So these are 1.35, 1.32, 1.36, 1.30 and 1.33. So what are the values? 0 centimeter, 0.02, 0.01, 0.03, 0.03. So these are the values that we will get after subtracting. So these are the absolute errors, okay, individual absolute errors. Now what will be the mean absolute error? Okay, so in generally you will be asked about the mean absolute error. So mean absolute error is simple, just add all the absolute errors, divide by the total number of errors. So there are total 8 values, therefore divide by 8 and add all the absolute errors. So after simplification you will find it to be 0.0175 approximately equal to 0.02. So our mean or the main absolute error, overall absolute error, comes out to be 0.02 centimeter. So on an average we committed this much error while measurement, okay, during our measurement we committed this much error. Now what is the relative error? So it is quite simple. Relative error tells us about the error in a measurement with respect to the original value, okay. So relative error will be equal to absolute error divided by plus minus divided by the mean value. So mean value is 1.33. So relative error is the error with respect to absolute error with respect to the original value, mean value. So it will come out to be plus minus 0.015. Now what is the meaning of plus minus? So here the plus minus indicates that the value could have been more, 0.015 more or 0.015 less during the measurement, okay. Sometimes the measurement was less than 1.33 and sometimes the measurement was more than 1.33, okay. So therefore plus minus. So this is the relative error, error with respect to the mean value. And what is the percentage relative error? It's just the percentage of the relative error. So multiply with 100%. So you will get plus minus 1.5%. So this is the relative error, relative percentage error, that there is a error of approximately 1.5% during the measurement. So this is how you can calculate these three types of errors: absolute error, relative error and the relative percentage error. So hopefully this error calculation is clear to you. It is important because during measurement none of the measurements can be 100% accurate. There will always be some errors. So this is how you can find this type of errors. So with this the second chapter is complete, and next we will start the physics. Now the crux of physics, the main topics of physics will start from the next topic, that is the rest and motion, chapter 3, okay. We will start with the mechanics, okay. First chapter 3 is the first topic in physics, that is mechanics.